The story begins with two girls arriving at a luxurious bar called Quindecim, and a bartender named Decim welcomes them. The woman explains that Quindecim is a place where the dead come to receive their judgment. Whether they go to heaven or hell is decided here. Making the right choice is an arbiter's job. Then, they go to the second floor. Soon after, a man and woman arrive. The man's name is Takashi, and the woman's name is Michiko. They have lost their memory, and the only thing they remember is being a married couple. Decim explains the rules, and one of the rules is that they cannot leave this place until they play a game. The game would be decided by roulette. The game they would be playing is darts. They each get to play 7 darts, and whoever scores the lowest would be the winner. Takashi throws a dart, and Michiko feels pain in her shoulder. Decim explains that whichever part of the board the dart hits, their opponent will experience pain in that part of their body. Michiko's dart hits the lungs, and she feels pain in her lungs. Takashi decides to throw the dart outside the board, but by mistake, Takashi hits the tongue. In anger, Michiko hits the eye, showing hell to Takashi. Takashi hits the stomach and kills their baby. In rage, Michiko hits the heart and wins the game. Michiko gets a flashback, and she realizes they had already died in an accident. Takashi gets enraged and asks if the child is his. Michiko shows her ugly nature and reveals that she never loved Takashi and only wanted his money. Takashi gets heartbroken and lunges to kill her. Decim stops him and sends them away. Takashi is sent to heaven, and Michiko gets sent to hell. The woman arrives and praises Decim for a job well done. The black-haired woman asks him if Michiko was seeing another man, and he says yes. But from her observation, Michiko was lying, and the baby was Takashi's. Decim's judgment was proved wrong. Because of her good judgment skills, she would be working as Decim's assistant. In the next episode, Decim welcomes a young man and woman. The man's name is Shigeru, and the woman doesn't remember her name. Decim explains all the rules. They would be playing the bowling game, and whoever scores the most would be the winner. They each have their own bowling ball, and it's linked to their opponent's heart. Shigeru plays first, and then the woman. After playing one round, they get a flashback. Shigeru makes a bet with her. If he wins, she will go on a date with him. After playing some rounds, they get another flashback, and she remembers her name. It's Chisato. Shigeru recalls how they died in a bus accident. After playing the last round, she gets a realization that she's not Chisato but a background character. Shigeru won. Despite knowing she wasn't Chisato, he asks her out on a date. Decim gives them some time for their date, and after that, both of them were sent to heaven. In the next episode, we have Yusuke Tatishi, an otaku, and Misaki Tachibana, a TV actress. Misaki plays the roulette, and their game would be an arcade PvP game. In order to win the game, one must win 2 rounds. Yusuke wins the first round, and after losing, Misaki gets a flashback of her memories. Misaki asks him to let her win the next match. In the second round, Decim uses a special remote to make Yusuke lose the round. In the third round, Decim uses the remote on Misaki. Without realizing it, she starts hitting Yusuke's head on the screen until he is unconscious. Decim orders her to continue the game. Yusuke wakes up and takes control of his character, and the match ends up in a draw. Misaki and Yusuke get flashbacks of how they died. Misaki's enraged manager had strangled her to death, and Yusuke, being so bored with his life, just self-deleted himself. Misaki got sent to hell, and Yusuke got sent to heaven. In the next episode, an old man and a boy came. The old man remembers being in Quindecim, and his experience was not a good one. He gets in a rage and grabs the boy. He threatens to stab the boy, and Decim subdues him with his silk thread. However, to Decim's surprise, the boy knocks the black-haired woman unconscious. Eventually, Decim catches him with his thread. The boy uses his powers and transforms into a grown man. He starts to fight Decim, but Decim defeats him. Then, Nona arrives and beats Jinty unconscious. Nona gives a lecture on his poor judgment and getting distracted by bait, and Decim gets a day off. Meanwhile, in Jinty's bar, Harada, a famous pop idol, and Mayu Arita, his self-proclaimed huge fan. Mayu is quite annoying for Jinty, so he lets her play the roulette. Then, he takes them to a different room, where he explains the game rules. They just have to follow the roulette wheel instructions and take different poses. Whoever falls first will lose. The game begins with Mayu, then Harada. Mayu starts making weird faces as she gets closer to him and tries to smell him. Jinty gets bored and uses the remote to make the game even harder for them. Now, each circle represents a penalty. She chooses red, and the entire floor starts burning hot. He chooses green, and a gust of wind starts coming from the bottom. She chose blue, and both of them started freezing. Harada showed his dance skills and chose yellow, the mystery button, and the entire floor fell. Now, whoever falls would lose. Harada tries to kick Mayu, but she gives up. He tries to save her, but she falls. She gets flashbacks of how she died by slipping over a soap. Harada remembers receiving a morning gift from his beloved, a time bomb. Jinti has to postpone their judgment because Mayu gives up. The black-haired woman finds a picture book and realizes that she is dead. In Quindecim, Decim makes preparations to make dinner, and then the black-haired woman asks if he holds anything precious to him. He makes a doll of Michiko and shows her. He explains that all the people who come here eventually turn into dummies, and instead of throwing them away, he likes to collect them. To test Decim's judgment, Nona asks Rina to give him a special case. At Quindecim, Tatsumi, a professional detective, and Shimada, a high schooler, arrived. These two are categorized as a special case because they have killed people before coming here, and this case is given by Nona to Decim. They would be playing air hockey, and whoever scores 5 points would win first. Tatsumi begins and scores 2 points in the first round. Shimada scores 2 points, and Tatsumi gets flashbacks of his wife being dead. Then, Tatsumi wins the next round, and Shimada gets flashbacks of his sister, who was assaulted. He resolves to take revenge for her. They reach the given time limit, so Decim adds a penalty. Each time the puck would be scored, they would feel pain in the area that was drawn on the puck. Tatsumi resolves to kill his wife's killer. The black-haired woman gets Shimada and Tatsumi's memory painted and collapses. She realizes that both of them had killed someone. Tatsumi scores a point, and Shimada feels pain in his stomach. He gets flashbacks of how he killed the assaulter and got injured. Shimada scores, and Tatsumi coughs up blood and sees himself taking revenge for his wife. Shimada scores again, and Tatsumi realizes that Shimada was the one that killed him. Shimada confronts Tatsumi for not saving his sister despite having the chance. Tatsumi prompts and says in order to punish someone, you need a victim, and his sister becomes one. Decim gives Shimada a chance to get revenge on Tatsumi. Even if he can't die, he can still feel pain. The black-haired woman stops Shimada, gets mad at Decim, and lectures him for knowing nothing about human nature. Tatsumi provokes Shimada, and he stabs the puck that was linked to his body. Tatsumi coughs up a pool of blood and falls to the floor. They both were sent to hell. Arbiters cannot stop passing judgment because it's the reason for their existence. An arbiter cannot feel human emotions. An arbiter cannot die because that would make them too close to a human being. Decim goes to meet Nona at her palace. She gives him an order to pass judgment on a black-haired woman. Decim notices her body falling apart, and he explains that if a living soul spends too much time here, their body starts to fall apart and turn into dummies. The black-haired woman asks how he would judge her. An old granny arrives. Her name is Uemura Sachiko, and she is a manga artist. They play a card game called Old Maid, and Decim decided to play with them. The rules are simple. Whoever has the joker at the end of the game would lose. Looking at the card, Granny realized she was in the afterlife. Granny wins first and explains the story of Shavo. The black-haired woman gets a flashback of her childhood, where she was asking her mother to read Shavo. Meanwhile, the black-haired woman remembers her name to be Chiyuki, and Decim wins the game, leaving her with the joker. Later, the granny went to heaven. She asks Decim how she died. Decim still does not understand human emotions. He believes to judge properly, he needs a complete understanding of human emotions, and for that, he asks her for help. Meanwhile, at Jinti's place, Mayu asks him why Harada was unconscious. He explains that his soul is inside the void, and to recover his soul, they need to send another soul. She volunteers to be sent in Harada's place. Jinti explains that if she went there, nothing but her grief and regret would be left of her. He asks her to decide who will go into the void, either the other guy or Harada. Decim gives her an ice skate, and she gets ready to perform her skate dance. When Chiyuki first arrived at Quindecim, unlike others, Chiyuki could remember that she was dead. Nona decided to erase all of her memory and observe her. In the present, Chiyuki starts her performance. Little by little, she gains her memories of her childhood, her parents, and her friend. Suddenly, one of her legs pops, and she remembers getting injured in the leg. The doctor said she would never be able to skate again. Being unable to skate breaks her, and eventually, she ends her own life. Decim gives her a last drink, and she falls unconscious. Meanwhile, Mayu takes the decision and decides to go with Harada into the void, and she mocks Jinti. He sends them to hell. Actually, Jinti lies to her, and they both disintegrate. Decim integrates all of Chiyuki's memories into himself. The old man tries to stop Nona, explaining an arbiter could never have human emotions. After all, dummies cannot have emotions. Nona believes arbiters are more than dummies, and they should have their own will. Decim takes Chiyuki to the living world. In the living world, 3 months have passed since she died, and she sees her mother. But her mother can't hear her. He explains they cannot interfere with the living. He gives her a remote and explains that if she pressed the button, her memories of Quindecim would be erased, and she would come back to life. But in exchange, someone precious to her would die. Seeing her mother in grief because of her broke her heart, but she realized that every person has someone precious to them. She threw the remote and broke into tears. Decim felt the sorrow Chiyuki was feeling, and his eyes changed. He screamed, and the world fell apart. He apologized to her for testing her until the end. The old man pities Decim and blames Nona for breaking Decim. Nona believes that in order for an arbiter to give proper judgment, they must understand human emotions. Decim promises Chiyuki to become an arbiter who gives proper judgment and sends her to heaven with a smile. We see Decim welcome 2 people with a smile, and that's where the video ends. Make sure to like and subscribe, and comment to me if you want more videos like this.